Hi, and welcome to Diversity in the Community. I am your host, Theresa Harris, since 2008. But I am so excited to have this young lady with me today. Actually, she used to be a part of Win TV, but she's doing so many wonderful things to help women, and you're going to find out about it, and hopefully after this session come out that you would follow her and watch what she does because she is an exceptional young lady, and none other than Lucinda Canty.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome. And now you have so many titles behind your name. I'm gonna say them, and you probably gonna have to add some more. Certified nurse midwife,
Yes.
nurse researcher,
hmm
founder and director of Lucinda's House, a community service providing resources, support, and connection. Reproductive justice activist,
hmm
black feminist. I
Yep.
mean, I can go on and on. But I want Lucinda, tell us a little bit about yourself that I didn't already tell.
Okay. Well, I'm a nurse midwife. I've been practicing for I want to say 30, at least 31 years now in
Wow.
midwifery, and 34 if you count when I became a nurse. But I've been working as a nurse midwife. I worked at Hartford Hospital, Charter Oak, Planned Parenthood,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm doing my own thing through Lucinda's House. And I also teach at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, so I'm an associate professor there, and that's where I conduct a lot of my research. And my research just focuses on maternal health equity, especially health outcomes among Black women. We're disproportionately impacted. So I want research that just doesn't say there's a problem. I want research that talks about what the solutions are
Mm-hmm.
and what people need so that they can feel safe in their care and just have a healthy pregnancy and birth.
Yes, yes. When you were here one time, and I was really shocked to find out that more babies survived or women did better back in the day when they were, and I was surprised,
hmm
because a lot of the
Yes,
women
yes.
back in the day,
hmm
they didn't go to college. They learned about how to deliver
hmm
babies because my mom was a midwife,
Yeah.
but they didn't know all of the other medical stuff. But more of those babies survived, and women did
hmm
better.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit
Then
about
right
that?
now.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's like history is something I love history. I love the arts,
Mm-hmm.
and history is something that's so important to me. And really, even for myself, like we have a painful history in this country,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it gave me strength. I would never have survived nursing or midwifery in this country if I didn't know my history.
Mm-hmm.
And what that showed me was that I have a right to be here and do what I want, what I'm doing. But also, when I looked at our history, I saw how there were midwives, and people always say, oh, they were untrained or uneducated. And that's not true. They had an education, they had a
Right.
training.
Mm-hmm.
And this even starts the moment our feet landed here, even the middle passage. There were midwives that were caring for not just pregnancy, really for everything,
Mm-hmm.
and including the whole family.
Right.
But pregnancy and birth are the things that they're most known for because
Mm-hmm.
that's where they were really needed the most.
Right. Right. Right.
Yes, and these were women who African traditions have been passed down. These were enslaved women
Mm-hmm.
and learned how to, again, provide birth. And the thing is that even during that time, giving birth, women felt empowered. There was
Mm-hmm.
something, even though they didn't know what was going to happen to that baby after,
Mm-hmm.
at that moment, that was their time where
Mm-hmm.
they had control, and they had a midwife that was creating that space for them.
Yes.
And when we look at slavery, they were needed, and they took care of everyone, not just the women, but also the masters' babies as well, and
Yes.
delivering
Yes.
those
Yes.
because they
Yes.
knew it was valuable, and they knew they knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And these were traditions that were passed down to handle complications, to provide comfort, even to have like herbal remedies, things that we grew in our garden to keep us well nourished, to help us
Yes.
heal.
Yes.
And society just felt like when insurances start to cover births, also people could learn off of our bodies. They were taken from the midwives, and the midwives were they made people believe that midwives were unsafe when they weren't. they were really the safest thing because they were from the community.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Mm-hmm.
knew. And even like you shared your mother's story,
Right.
where people trusted her.
Mm-hmm.
And you trust when someone knows the context of the times and they know what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to keep asking you questions. They already
Right.
know, and they're going to make sure they do what they can do to mitigate that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was safer for us. I talked to midwives who would go into a home and there's no running water, no electricity.
Mm-hmm.
The woman basically had the bare minimum, but still she delivered that baby safely and the mom
Yes.
was safe.
Yes. Yes.
So can you imagine then to go into a home that where there's darkness, you need a lantern,
Mm-hmm.
to now we have all this technology,
Right.
and we're still not surviving.
Exactly.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Oh my God. Oh my
Yes.
God. Can you tell me about, first of all, this one that I'm always mispronouncing, but I think you told me and I got it right. What actually is a doula?
Okay. So doulas are, some people will say that they're not medical personnel, but I consider them a part of the healthcare team.
Mm-hmm.
They provide support to women during pregnancy, post-childbirth, and postpartum. And there's also doulas that help with other aspects of their lives.
Okay.
And so, but they provide like support, they help advocate. But what I love is that they provide education.
Okay.
And so things that someone may not get during their medical visit,
Mm-hmm.
or they're given the information, but they can't understand all of it,
Mm-hmm.
is the doula that will come in and help to explain things.
Okay.
And that helps them prepare to make decisions about their care, but also especially their care during childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
But they're women that, again, it's almost like reminds me of our traditional midwives, how
Uh-huh.
they receive an education and a training, and then they get certified
Okay.
that they to become a doula.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how far back? Because I had never heard the name before until I met
Yeah.
a young lady and she said that she was one.
Yes.
And yeah.
And I think doulas have always been around, because the other part I forgot to mention is with midwives, birth was about community.
Mm-hmm.
So people would come when someone was giving birth, there were people that would support, that could help with, if there's other children, that could cook, that
Yeah.
could clean, so that the mother could focus on herself and rest after she gives birth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always been women in the community that provided that support. And I consider the same thing that midwives were doing during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Even right now, I feel like there's an overlap. They're not delivering the baby, but they're there to provide support.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they've always been there. We've heard of doulas more when people came also from other countries and they were new here, they didn't have their family.
Mm-hmm.
So they could hire a doula that could help them through that birth.
Okay.
So it's really anyone that could provide that support.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this always been there. We're just naming it now. We're seeing it, we're naming it, and we're realizing that is an important profession,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to improving health outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Again, I was like really surprised when I looked at the statistics of today, how many women, even really wealthy people who are big entertainers and all that, who were having issues after their births.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think that was the first time I asked you about, what about back in the day when it was just, and you said, no, it's,
yes, anyone. And that's why we know, like Black race is not a risk factor. It's really the circumstance and things that we live in every day.
Yeah.
It's really the racism that we experience on a daily level.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that, that's about someone calling someone a name or this and that, but it's really about resources.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have all the money, you can have degrees. Even for myself, I have a PhD and I still enter and I'm treated a certain way when I go in for my visits. I'm sometimes talked to like, I don't know my ABCs, I'm talked down to.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's resources that I need to be healthy, but I'm not given those resources.
Right.
And so you can have as much money as you want, but if you don't have what you need to take care of yourself and maintain your health, that's where the issues come in.
Mm-hmm.
But also when I enter the healthcare system, if somebody feels like I don't belong there or I'm causing trouble or I don't understand my pain, all of that interferes with care.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Serena Williams' issue. When she said that she was having chest pain, she was having pain, they were like, oh, you just had a cesarean, just rest. And because she was persistent, she was like, no, something is wrong. They actually found clots in her lungs.
Wow.
But if they said, oh, just rest, and she would have just rested and ignored it, she probably would not be here today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the scary part. So that when we go in, And that's the thing with being here in the United States. You could go to every single appointment. You could even be eating right. You could not have any diseases like, high blood pressure, because they always like to talk about obesity and our blood pressure.
Right.
You could not even have that. You could be an athlete like Serena Williams or Tori Bowie, who was also very healthy, and she died from a preventable pregnancy-related cause.
Wow.
So you could go to every appointment, you could go to childbirth classes, breastfeeding classes, and you could still die or come close to dying in this country if you're a Black woman.
Yeah, I believe that.
And that's the part that doesn't make sense.
Yep, I believe that. I remember when I had my first child, and you know how they did deliver the afterbirth or whatever they did, and it was so excruciatingly painful. My mother said they were supposed to wait until that came out, and I had no clue. They just rushed me through. I'm in pain. They'll pull it. They're doing what they do. And she said, and as a midwife, she said they were supposed to wait. They wasn't supposed to. Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that pregnancy is a natural process. It's been happening since the beginning of time. But it's not like our bodies know what to do, and our bodies will also tell us when something is wrong. But if no one is listening to that, or people want to rush, like you go in, you're having your first baby, let your water break on its own, give it some time. Some people, as soon as you're in the bed, they want to break your water, or they want to induce you. That's the big thing. Instead of waiting for labor to happen, unless there's an emergency where the baby needs to come out now, they'll say, oh, we should deliver you by 37 weeks because this could happen to you. Not that this is happening. And that's where I feel that we do get into trouble, is that we interfere sometimes too much.
Yeah.
And then that's where I think issues come in from, even just infection or with the placenta. We're supposed to wait for that placenta to separate on its own.
Yep.
If we don't, we can cause a hemorrhage, or we can cause infection.
Right.
And that should be some discomfort as it's coming down. But if you're in excruciating pain, they're moving too fast.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we need to slow down with labor and just let things happen.
Yes. I remember talking to you before too, and when we're talking about race here, when there was a young woman that was in the hospital, and a group of doctors and interns or whatever came in to see her. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't do anything. They just pulled the cover back and started to examine her.
Yes. And that's part of the problem too, is that there has to be some respect, especially for most of us. But I know in the Black community, I could even say this for the Latino community, is our reproductive health is private. We don't want anyone to disrespect us. For some of us, that's our most important part of our culture. And some people don't respect that. So they'll come in, it's like anybody has access to your body when you're in the hospital.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
You should ask permission. First, introduce yourself.
Exactly.
And I'll even say, know who you're talking to, because sometimes they don't even know the patient's name.
Right.
They just know that patient in room 38 needs to be examined, and they'll go in the room and check instead of it coming, not even asking, how are you doing? This is what I need to do. They just examine and they say, oh, we got to do this for the baby. Or sometimes they don't even say that. So I know people who have been examined and they don't even know why they're being checked. And it turns out we examine too much.
Right.
Because each time we examine, we introduce infection. But whenever you're touching someone's body in any kind of way, even if you're just putting your hand on their shoulder, you really need to ask for permission to be able to do that.
Right.
And that's where the power dynamics come in when somebody is in the hospital. And I have so many women, and I say this with the first pregnancy, because I often hear women say, well, this was my first, I didn't know. And then sometimes the second pregnancy, they're more armed and they know, wait, what are you doing? Tell me what's going on. But your first pregnancy, you're so nervous anyways. You don't know what's going to happen. And that's the thing with pregnancy and birth, is so unpredictable. But then you have someone who's coming in and doing things. Your immediate thought is that they're coming in to help me, and they're doing the right thing.
Right.
And sometimes they're doing it because they're trying to learn, which is still okay, but you have to ask permission.
Exactly.
But if someone doesn't need to be checked, or even if they say no, then you should not be touching them.
Exactly.
And they should not feel pressured into doing anything.
Right. And I love it because you're educating so many young women that didn't know that they had the right. No, this is a doctor, so I can't say anything.
Yes.
You know.
And so many of us, even for myself, I remember having providers that I didn't feel comfortable with. But I was like, but I'm here, they're going to check me. But now I'm like, if I don't feel comfortable, I have the right to be like, I don't want you touching me.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want to see somebody else. Or if you don't feel comfortable with the information, I want to get a second opinion.
Right, right.
We're kind of taught and raised that whatever the doctor says, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we go with it, even if we're like, that doesn't sound right. So now I'm not saying to fight your doctor, but you should be able to ask questions and they should be able to answer. And
Right.
if they don't know, then they should find someone who can help.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's just my thing is about that respect. And a lot of times that's missing. Even our culture is missing in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know someone's culture, then you know there's a way when you enter that room that you have to present yourself.
Right, right, right.
But people don't know that. And they don't even realize how they look when they enter the patient's room.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the patient's like, they didn't even look at me, or I asked them a question, they ignore me, or I told them I was in pain, and they were like, oh, that's normal, you're fine. And then later something happens and it's not fine.
Right, right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Now, Lucinda's house.
Yeah.
You said was to address racial disparities in maternal health outcomes. How did you come up with starting Lucinda's house?
Okay,
I know
yes.
because of what you were talking about.
Yes, yes. And for me, and I've been, again, working as a nurse midwife for years, and then entered academia.
Mm-hmm.
And for academia, if I wanted to be like a professor or be on the tenure track, I had to go back to school to get a doctorate degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I told to get a degree in a PhD because I wanted to do research.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do research in a way that I felt that research should be done in our communities.
Yeah.
And it's really, again, about the respect and creating research where people have a voice.
Right.
And so that's where I started to learn about the maternal health issues. Like, I didn't even know that Black women were dying. I was caring for patients, and I didn't see that in the patients I cared for.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got outside of, I guess, my bubble, that's when I started hearing about the issues of Black women dying, especially from things they shouldn't be dying from.
Right.
And so I did my research around that. I want to understand. And that was the other piece, is I found out nobody was researching Black women,
Mm-hmm.
that everything was looking at our charts, looking at statistics. No one was looking at the people behind the statistics.
Okay.
And so I went to women who almost died during childbirth because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I want to hear what your experiences are. And just from that, I found out that race does matter. Again, you could go to prenatal care. The minute you find out you're pregnant and still have complications, it didn't matter your degree or education.
Mm-hmm.
But also that there was so much with information, like health information being withheld or things not explained properly, people having serious complications and not fully knowing what happened.
Right.
They know pieces of it, but they don't even know why that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So health information was important, but also having a relationship with their healthcare provider.
Right.
But
Right.
also the piece too is the mental health piece, because pregnancy is all about our mental health and well-being too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we focus so much on the physical parts of pregnancy. We don't think about what moms or what the fathers go through when someone is pregnant. And your mental health could be impacted. Even if
Right.
things are good, you could still have postpartum depression.
Yes.
And so, and this was around, because I graduated 2020. And so COVID was like happening. And that's when I started learning about these statistics and learning about the prevention. And I was like, I don't have a lot of resources, but I know what I know, I can do something.
Yes.
And I was like, through Lucinda's house, I could do that.
Yes.
Like, I've always had people ask questions. Like, when people find out I'm a nurse or a midwife, they're like, oh, this happened to me. Can you tell me what's happened? So people always love telling me their stories,
Mm-hmm.
or they would come to me for advice.
Yeah.
So I said I could make that where anyone could come to me to ask questions, or we could do education. We could do some things in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like those things I could address.
Yeah.
And that's how Lucinda's house originated.
Mm-hmm.
And I started out virtual. So I would do virtual groups. I would talk to women through Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And October last year, I finally have a physical location.
Okay.
Yeah, because I would
Okay.
do a lot in the community too. Like, I would go to churches. I was on the Amistad ship, and that was a lot of fun. I don't even like water like that. I don't even like water like that, but I was on the ship, and it was just fun to be in the community and talk with women of color, but particularly Black women, just about our experiences.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can do that. So I received a grant that allowed me to be able to provide services without charging. And now I can still do that. Like I have
Okay.
grants that will cover even the programs that I do. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you start to add in money, and I also want to say, like with Lucinda's house, I see everyone, all socioeconomic status, everyone, anyone who's pregnant. It just feels so new, and you feel like there's so much you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen people from all over
Right.
that just want information or want to know how to navigate certain situations. So, but I want to have it that if you don't have the resources, you're already, I think everything, especially now, is costing so much.
Yeah.
And I feel, deep down, I feel like healthcare should be free.
Yeah.
But that saying that could get me into trouble. So I won't go down
we
that
don't want you to get in
road.
trouble.
But that's everybody's right to have quality healthcare.
Yeah.
And so I felt like as a midwife, those are things that I could do. And Lucinda's house gives me the space to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But there
Yeah.
are countries that healthcare is all free, right?
Yeah, yes.
So
And they have better health outcomes than we do.
we didn't say anything about that. Can you tell me about April 26, 2025, the Western Massachusetts Black
Oh,
Nurses
yes.
Association Scholarship Luncheon?
Oh, yes. So that was their annual meeting where they provide scholarships to nursing students.
Okay.
And it just turned out, and I was their keynote speaker, and it turned out that the 3 nurses, or I should say nursing students who received awards, all were at UMass Amherst.
Okay.
Yeah, even though they opened it up to everyone in the Springfield area. But
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
so it was really nice. And it's just that for me, another way to address what's happening, and I do this also through Lucinda's house, is support and mentor those who want to become nurses or midwives.
Okay.
Because it's really, nursing is not diverse at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like 80% of nurses are white, and the rest are nurses of color.
Okay.
And that also is not our history, because
Right.
when no one wants to care for us, we care for our own communities.
Right.
And I always ask people who took care of you in your communities. Think about your grandparents, great-grandparents. Who was there providing care to them? And they were most likely from their own communities, because we couldn't go to certain schools or work in certain areas.
Right.
Because people think segregation was a long time ago, and it was only the 1960s. So I always say, who was there? Who were those nurses or midwives working with you? But when you look at the numbers, you don't see that.
Right.
We went from providing like 80% of the births, traditional Black midwives, to now is like probably 1% that are doing births.
Yeah.
So for me, we have to change, because it's not like this one thing that I do want to make clear that people always try to make it seem like is that Black people are inferior, or we're not smart enough, or we can't cut it. And none of that is true. A lot of times we're working harder than anyone else, and we still run into barriers.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to go into nursing or wants to become a doula, I want to make sure that there's resources for them so that they could do that, because we're all needed in these spaces.
Right.
So I mentor nursing students from their undergrads to even students who are in there doing their own research, because we've run into barriers all levels.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah.
I think about my cousin, which you know her story. My mother was a midwife in the South. She delivered my cousin, who became the first Black nurse educator in one of the biggest hospitals here. And my mother was a midwife.
Yes. We can do it. And so we just need the support. And even for Black women, and I also want to make sure that's clear, is that there's nothing wrong with us medically. We could go enter a pregnancy healthy and we're dying. So we got to look further and deeper into why that's happening.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong with us. It's not race. It's not because we're Black. It's how the system is set up that is almost designed for us not to thrive. And I even say that for myself. And my parents didn't go to college. I'm the first person that didn't go to college. I mean, I went to college.
Right.
My dad didn't graduate from high school. But I had support in the right places.
Right.
But I also had a lot of people that tried to discourage me when I wanted to become a nurse. Even my guidance counselor was like, oh, I applied to different schools. And he's like, oh, I don't think these schools are going to accept you, but the community college might. And the community college put everybody else accepted me except for the community college. They put me on a waiting list. So, but when I talked about just dreaming of being a nurse, people were like, oh, are you sure? You know, like I had so much resistance. And then the same as a midwife. Oh, that's tough. That's not going to be hard. But I'm like, I just want to try.
Yeah.
So it's so important for us to allow each other to dream.
Yes.
And I think that's where we start to get those barriers that prevent us from just being well and doing well.
Right.
Even now, somebody comes pregnant, they go in for their first visit, and they're told, "Oh, you might get diabetes. We might have to induce you, or you're probably gonna have a cesarean." And I talked to a mom; she was only 6 weeks, and they're telling her all these things. I was like, "Let's erase that. Let me know how you're doing now. How are you feeling?"
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "I feel good." So I said, enjoy your pregnancy, and you just lead with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we always run into people telling us the worst things that can happen to us, instead of just letting us be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part too that I want to change with Lucinda's house.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Can you tell me about your recent article about the historical study of the graduates of the Tuskegee School of Nurse Midwifery? I think I'm saying it right.
Yes.
What prompted you to conduct this study?
So that study, actually, I just published it, but that study I actually did when I was at Yale doing my master's thesis.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout my undergrad nursing, I didn't hear anything about Black nurses, really no nurses of color. I only heard about Florence Nightingale.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I entered my midwifery program, again, it was like, Black people, other people of color were absent. So I was like, I know that we had to contribute something. And I talked with my advisor, and she told me about the school that was designed in the 1940s for Black nurses to be trained as midwives.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just with the history, so we had traditional midwives. The medical field said that we were unsafe and that nurse midwives would be safer.
Mm-hmm.
So they felt like nursing with midwifery would elevate midwifery care.
Uh-huh.
There was no research behind it. They added nursing because the OBs could control the nurses. They even wrote the nursing textbooks.
Wow.
So they eliminated the traditional Black midwives, but then they realized that there were a lot of Black people, and there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough of them to work with us. So they were like, let's train Black nurses to work with Black women. And so that's where the school originated from. And it ran from 1941 to 1946. They graduated 31 Black midwives. Wow. And they were able to, and they worked in Tuskegee, Alabama. Mm-hmm. My uncle said Alabama's the hottest place on earth. So they worked in the Alabama heat. They went out to homes. They did prenatal clinics in churches, and they improved the health outcomes. But they still had to deal with the racism of the time. So nobody wanted to pay them. Even the instructors, they were working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and no one wanted to pay them.
Wow.
And they couldn't sustain. They were like, we need a good quality of life. So some of them left, but they ended up closing the school. Even though they were successful, they decreased the maternal mortality rate from like 14 per, I want to say 10,000, and they decreased it to 0. So they improved the health outcomes for the babies. But they were they just didn't want. There were OBs in the area that didn't want them to thrive. There were people who they didn't want them to be as successful. And there were also, so that's really where it came from. They had money to pay for the school, but they said, oh, we don't have money. So they sent that school to the local hospital instead of helping to sustain and paying the midwives what they needed so that they could keep the practice and things going, in school going. So, but I wrote this article because I wanted our stories to be told. And I'm still doing historical research. I did a presentation, like I presented, I talked about your mom, because I wanted people to know who midwives were and what they did. So I just, that was just a way for me to bring their story to light, because no one didn't know about them and still don't know. And my goal is for this to be a part of nursing and midwifery education, that people know that there were Black midwives that were doing the work in their communities, and that were successful in doing that. So that's my baby. And at the time I didn't publish it because I still felt like people weren't valuing really Black history, especially in nursing. And I think of some of that I internalized because I didn't see myself. But now I felt like it was the time to publish it, because if we want to improve health outcomes we have to look at what they did and how they worked in the community.
Right.
And we have to recognize that we don't all have to look the same in nursing.
Exactly.
That we need to have diversity so that people can see themselves when they go in for care.
Exactly.
So I'm just going to keep telling those stories.
Before we go any further, you just said the word baby. So I'm thinking about your son, handsome young man. I remember the first time that I saw pictures of him. He was just a baby, and then he was cooking for you. But now he's how old?
Now he's 15.
So you want to talk a little bit about him?
Yes, that's my baby, Ryan. Ryan Anthony. And he's my heart. And he's the reason that I do fight as hard as I do.
Yes.
Because I just want a better world for him. And I think about even the generation now that are his age. I don't want them to deal with what we're dealing with now.
Right.
I want things to be better. But he's many times he thinks he's smarter than me, that he knows more.
Yeah, like mine.
He cooks, but not as much. He's my everything. He's not perfect, but he's young, he's growing.
Yes.
He's plays basketball and volleyball.
Oh, wonderful.
And he just wants, he wants to be loved. He wants to, I know like sometimes I know there's girl, he won't tell me, but I know he has girls that he has a little crush on.
He's going to be mad with you. He's going to be mad with you.
Yeah, because he thinks I don't know. But I know he has a crush on one or two people. But he's just my heart.
Yeah, I know he is. I know he is. I couldn't believe the last time I saw a picture of him, and I'm like, oh my God, it grew so fast.
Yeah, he's like 6'3".
Oh my goodness. I know he's proud of his mom.
Yeah, yes. And he loves what I'm doing. Like he's learning more. He's learning about race. Sometimes like when he was younger, because I did some presentations online or virtual, and he would come and he'd be like, Mom, you didn't let anybody else talk. And I'm like, I'm presenting, it's my turn to present. But I realized that he listens, and I'm hoping too, because my thing as well is that especially him as a Black male, and I know we want Black males to be safe, it's so scary.
Yeah. But
I also really want him to know how to treat and respect Black women.
Yes.
Really everyone. Yeah. But I just really want him to understand, that how important that is. And it's still a continuous process, because TikTok and all these other things take kids places they shouldn't be going.
Yes.
So sometimes it's counteracting that.
Yes. Oh my, I'm enjoying you so much until I think that you need to do this more often. Because you have so much information that's so important. And because I got all these questions down here, and I don't know if we're going to go over, but I got so much because I follow you. And I just, I love what you're doing. And it's so important, because I think of my mom and think of other women and I think of things that my daughter went through. And so your stuff is so important. And that's why I just think you need something that's on a regular basis to, a minute of how many of a minutes to just tell women, to keep informing them.
Yes,
because it's so important.
And with my work, like I talk about, I just have like my midwifery experience goes from women's health, from adolescence, post to even past menopause and beyond. And there's so many topics that we don't talk about. And that's also what Lucinda's house that I want to bring forward. Like I would do childbirth classes, or I would present, and I would have someone come up to me and say, I had a miscarriage. Or someone would say, I delivered my baby early. Can you do a class or group on that? And so I started looking into women who experience loss, and just from them learned things that people want us to really be able to talk about.
Yes.
And that's one of the areas. Infertility is another area. And now I'm getting a lot about menopause. Like women are like, is this normal? I'm going through perimenopause.
Yeah.
But they're feeling like they don't have spaces where they can talk about it.
Right.
So that's what I would like to do.
Yeah.
Just provide the education, be able to talk about it openly. A lot of, especially in the Black community, there's a lot of things we go through that we suffer alone. And we really shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was doing a podcast with someone, and miscarriage came up. And in the podcast, she talks about how She was at work. It was their lunch period, and there were 4 of them in the lunchroom. And somehow they started talking about miscarriage, and they realized that all 4 of them experienced a miscarriage, but they
Wow.
never talked about it before.
Wow.
But the other part where she was like, I thought I was the only one, and I realized that I'm not alone. And that's something, and I just want to say that when someone experiences a miscarriage, there's such a connection to the pregnancy from the very beginning that is not something you just get over or that you move on and you say, oh, I could get pregnant again. So it's so important to realize that women need to have time to heal from that. And sometimes that involves talking to people.
Yeah.
And it also involves people just listening to what their experiences are. Because a lot of times we think we know, or we're like, oh, she was early, so she'll get over it. But there's that connection that when they lose that pregnancy, it's almost like their heart is broken.
Yeah.
And so I want to do more education around that. I do have stuff posted on my website, but I would also even love to come to Win TV and do a series on just different health issues.
Yes.
But that being like some of the topics, that infertility, those are some of the topics we need to talk about. But even I like to also just talk about how we just take pride in our health and what are things that we do to keep healthy. What are things, the positive parts of pregnancy, what brings us joy. I think those are the most important pieces too, that we have to think about when we think about our health.
Yes.
So I like to I would love to do some education around that to get people to at least even just start talking about it.
Yes, yes. So if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, is there like how would they contact you?
So they could start at the website. All my information is there. Also on social media, I'm on Instagram, Lucinda Midwife. Lucinda House also has an Instagram and Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So those are ways to get in touch with me. But also through the website, you can email me, and you can also see the programs that we have. Some are virtual. I'm going to be doing some things in person, and I would even like to do a community baby shower in Windsor as well.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to look into how I can do that.
So a community baby shower that people would just bring donations, and you know the women that you're just going to. Yes.
So what we do is like we'll find out what are resources in the area that support pregnant women or women postpartum or even women planning to become pregnant. So we invite them to come. We get donations, so we give them out to the mothers. So if there's things that they need for their pregnancy or for their baby, they can come. And we just make it a celebration. Because there's so much like a cloud over pregnancy. When pregnancy has never really been that way. It's always been something that brings joy.
Yes.
And I love things that help to decrease anxiety. Like that person that's like, I don't want to have a baby. Because I hear this from women. They just got married or they're in a relationship and they're thinking about having children. And they're like, but I'm scared something's going to happen to me. I don't want them to say that. I want to take that sentence out. I want them to be like, I can't wait to get pregnant.
Right.
You know, I have these things to look forward to. Like, I want to change that narrative.
Right.
And our community baby showers help us do that. Just say, like, you're pregnant. These are resources from breastfeeding, doulas. We even have mental health people that come. Agencies that provide, even WIC comes to our baby showers and they provide information on their services. So we try to do that, and then we always have good food. Usually somebody local.
Good food. Yeah, I like that.
One thing with pregnant women, you can't fool around with food. I learned that even from my own pregnancy. I was like, don't stand between me and my plate. That's a problem. So we always make sure we have good food, healthy food, and again, just make it that it's fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that you need, because I had so many questions, but I don't think we're going to get through all of them, because I just love hearing you explain. I think it's so wonderful. I think it's so needed, and I think it needs to be heard on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I would love to see you do like a regular podcast or something.
Okay.
Because
well,
it is so needed.
Yes.
You know, and like I said, I got so many so much here on my paper. I know we wouldn't get through all of them. So is there anything else that you would like to, before we go off, that you would like to talk about?
Just to say that even though you're hearing all these things about pregnancy and birth, that it doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to feel alone in that. Just to know that there's support in the community. There's doulas, again, out there that have their own organizations, are doing things. There's midwives. So, and there's even, providers that are coming into the community to do events.
Okay.
But I would just say that when it comes to your health, you shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. You shouldn't feel ashamed of anything that's happening. That, sometimes even talking it out. I've had patients where they thought things were a problem and they really weren't a problem. They were normal. But they were like, but no one talks about this. But I'm like, that doesn't mean it's not normal or that it's okay for you. So I just want people to feel that comfort with it. I want people that if you feel like you want additional support, and sometimes that support could be just having a person you could ask a question to. And I always feel like there's no question that's too small or too big. And I'd rather us talk it out and guide you to find accurate information to help you just make decisions about your health. But I just want people to know that there's resources out here that you could have a healthy pregnancy. Even if you have a pre-existing condition, it can still happen. And if you're with a provider that you just need help navigating, sometimes it's about asking the right questions the right way. And so you can even have support in doing that as well. And I would just say for when it comes to maternal health, it's a community thing. It's not just, everything shouldn't be just put on the woman. So we have to do, especially now in this social climate more than ever, we have to do what we can to protect and support each other instead of fighting each other. So how can we make it so that the environment is safe, that if we do see someone who is pregnant, maybe they're not being treated right or they need something, to find a way to support them and ask them what it is that they need. Yeah, but it's a community. That's our history. Is having community around pregnancy and birth.
Oh my God, so important. I thank you so much. Did you, before I go off, did you want to look in the camera and say a final word? I know you've said that's so much. I just love it.
I just want to say that there's so much, I guess, hate, so much foolishness that's happening right now that we really can't fall into that, because that prevents us from caring for ourselves and each other. So I would say just support, instead of, I feel like communities know what they need. Black women we know what we need to be healthy, to live well. It's just that we have so many barriers that are in the way. And I think people need to decide, are you going to be a source of support, or are you going to continue to be a barrier? And if you're going to be a barrier, you need to move out of the way and just let us be.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again, sweetheart. It's so
thank
good
you for having me.
to see you. It's so good to have you be in the same space. I see you on social media, but you're doing a wonderful thing, educating people, and we are so proud of you. I'm so proud. I'm so proud to know you. Every time I see you out on social media, I'll say always proud, whatever I say. And I just thank you for I know you're a busy lady, and I thank you for taking the time to come down. I wish your son the very best, going from a little fella, seeing him cooking for his mama, and now seeing him doing other things, And so I thank you again. And to the Win TV audience, we've been here since 2008, and I thank you so much for watching the different programs. And actually, this young lady used to be a part of our group. So she used to be a part of Win TV. So when you see this, you see how important this information is. We're not just sitting here talking. We're talking about things that can change lives. So when you see this episode come out, please share it. We tend to share things that are negative. So this is something positive that can help other people. So please share it. And I thank you for watching. Take care.
Thank you.